I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Let's get right to the breaking news. Night is about to fall in Ferguson, Missouri. Authorities are now bracing for another round of violence after a grand jury's decision not to indict the white police officer Darren Wilson in the death of African-American teenager Michael Brown. That sparked a frenzy of burning, looting, and wanton destruction. A dozen buildings were torched. Cars were set ablaze. Dozens of arrests were made. Missouri's governor says the National Guard will be out in force tonight.
The violence we saw in the areas of Ferguson last night cannot be repeated. There will be more than 2,200 National Guardsmen in the region. Lives and property must be protected.
But Ferguson's mayor asks, why wasn't that done sooner? Brown family lawyers say the grand jury process is broken, and if nothing else, the timing of last night's announcement is being widely criticized. As protests spread across the country, President Obama is expected to address the events in Ferguson. We're going to hear from the president later this hour. The National Urban League president, Mark Morial, he's standing by along with our correspondents, our analysts, our newsmakers. Let's begin with CNN's Sarah Seidner. She's in Ferguson and has the very latest. Sarah?
Wolf, just a few moments ago, we noticed the National Guard. I'll give you a look at it straight on there behind me. Showed up, got prepared, got their orders, and got their riot gear together. They're being put in a line, almost a human blockade, if you will, outside the City of Ferguson Police Department and Municipal Court. They've been here for, maybe about a half an hour or so. That's when we first noticed them. We had residents, Wolf, talking to us last night while we were in the streets in West Florissant saying, where is the National Guard? But time and again, the governor did say that the National Guard was going to be playing a role behind the scenes unless they were needed. Now, clearly, they have moved to the forefront. Tonight, National Guard troops in Ferguson and more local police patrolling the streets after the city fell into chaos. As Michael Brown's family called for peaceful protests, his mother appealed to the crowd.
I've been here my whole life. I ain't never had to go through nothing like this.
Followed by this angry outburst from Brown's stepfather. Across the city, stores did burn. Buildings looted, a night of outrage.
What I've seen tonight is probably much worse than the worst night we ever had in August.
The protest channeling a deep sense of anger about both the outcome of the grand jury and the manner in which the investigation was handled.
I just think it's real sickening, very sickening.
The attorney for the Brown family echoing that outrage.
A first-year law student would have did a better job of cross-examining a killer of an unarmed person than the prosecutor's office did.
Some 61 arrests were made overnight, many from Ferguson and the St. Louis community.
While we support everybody's right to come out and have their voices heard, you will see a large police presence, and when crime starts, you'll see us in intervention much more quickly than we did last night.
And as law enforcement officials prepare for the worst, members of the community here are dealing with the fallout.
We definitely have done something here that is going to impact our community for a long time.
There is absolutely plenty of frustration from some of the residents here we've spoken to and some of the business owners we've spoken to. The biggest worry now is, will the businesses come back? This community will be hurting economically for sure with all of the burnt out buildings and the jobs that have been lost. Wolf.
We see those National Guard troops behind you. Sarah, why weren't they deployed in massive numbers last night? They knew this was coming.
Right, but the governor himself had said that they were going to be playing a different role, that their role was going to be to protect, for example, the command center, and that they wouldn't be in the front, on the front lines. That would be taken care of by several of the police departments who had come together to form a command, including St. Louis County, and they were out in force. And something that someone was talking to me about, they said, well, what were they going to do differently? I mean, a lot of concern about how they would have done things differently, Wolf, because as you you noticed, there were large vehicles blocking the street over time, the police trying to push people back, especially on West Florissant. But they are certainly front and center now, at least here at the Ferguson Police Department, stationed here to protect the department itself, Wolf.
Well, they clearly have learned from the blunder of last night. They should have been out there last night. They weren't, but they will be out there tonight. They're going to try to fix it. We'll see what happens. Sarah, thanks very much. Burning, looting, rock throwing, tear gas. CNN's Don Lemon. He was in the middle of all of it last night, and you saw him live here on CNN. He's been out on the streets of Ferguson all day. He was at that news conference with Michael Brown's family earlier in the day, and Don is joining us right now. Don, the family today remains furious about how all of this was handled. I know it's very tense right now. Before we get into the family, let's talk about the National Guard. Do you see those guys? There are 2,000 of them ready to patrol the streets. Do you have a better answer why they didn't decide to patrol, why they didn't give the order last night?
Wolf, we don't. We got the guidance, you did, all the media, from the governor last night that those National Guard would be out and they would be patrolling, and also that they would be protecting the Ferguson Police Department. And that's where we saw so much chaos last night as we were out here. Not exactly sure where they were. A lot of the people who were saying, we don't need this over-militarized look here. We don't need the National Guard in Ferguson, in the St. Louis area. They were saying that. And then last night, after all that unrest, people were wondering, oh my gosh, where is the National Guard? So now the National Guard, a wanted entity, and as you see from our viewpoint here, the National Guard is here. Just a couple of minutes ago, probably about 20 minutes ago, I think it was 3 buses of them drove up, and about 200 of them got out, and now they are guarding the Ferguson Police Department. Where they were last night, I don't know. It's our understanding that they were protecting federal buildings and landmarks in the city of St. Louis rather than being in Ferguson. And we're also told that the mayor of Ferguson was wondering, where's the National Guard? My city is burning. I don't see them anywhere.
And you saw all those businesses, family-owned businesses, mom and pop stores, whether a cleaner's, whether a beauty salon, whether a 7-Eleven type store.
Sad.
You saw all of those literally burnt out, destroyed, looted, and these people are really suffering as a result of that.
They are, and your heart can't help but go out to them. When we were back here in August, a lot of people lost business because they were just afraid of the possibility of something happening. Now something real has happened. Instead of being afraid of the possibility, they have lost, many of them, their livelihoods. And so now they have nothing to go to. They don't know how they're going to pay their bills. They don't know how they're going to get their businesses back open and running if they want to do that again. So the message about injustice, about how to fix the problems with the police department and the community, about over-militarization of the police departments, about profiling, about all of that, about police brutality, that has been overshadowed by people who chose to loot and burn and to put these people out of their livelihoods. It's really sad. And we drove through, Wolf, some areas that had not been touched by violence the last time we were here. And as we were driving here to the Ferguson Police Department, or driving to the family press conference today, we're actually surprised to see so many businesses being boarded up, so many businesses with bashed out windows, and so many businesses that had been burnt out. It's awful.
It certainly is. All right, Don, I know you're going to be with us throughout the next 2 hours, so stand by. The Ferguson mayor says his city simply did not get the help it so desperately needed last night.
Unfortunately, as the unrest grew and further assistance was needed, the National Guard was not deployed in enough time to save all of our businesses. The decision to delay the deployment of the National Guard is deeply concerning. We are asking that the governor make available and deploy all necessary resources to prevent the further destruction of property and the preservation of life in the city of Ferguson.
So what's going to happen tonight? And we're bracing for more of what happened last night. Let's bring in our justice reporter, Evan Perez. Evan, the mayor doesn't sound obviously very pleased with what he heard from the governor. Clearly there was a major blunder someplace. You were at the news conference that the prosecutor gave last night. The governor simply said it was up to the prosecutor to decide the timing of the release of all that information. The governor, Jay Nixon, he walked away from that decision. That was clearly a pretty awful decision to release the information. No indictment, 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern.
Well, if you know, what you see is really like passing the buck right here today. You have the mayor of Ferguson, whose city was burning, saying that he was on the phone trying to get the governor to send National Guard in. He says he hasn't talked to the governor of Missouri since August. And, you know, his city has seen these protests all along these last couple of months. So then you have also the governor basically, blaming the prosecutor for having no communication. What last night really has exposed is how behind the scenes all these officials who are supposed to be working together are really not. They've been fighting. They've been trying to determine, who gets the blame for whatever happens next. They've been trying to oust the police chief of Ferguson, as you know, Wolf. You have all these people who are basically supposed to be, trying to make sure that this community is protected. And really, last night, the whole plan they had to get put together fell apart.
And the prosecutor in this particular case, Robert McCulloch, he's standing by his decision. No charges, no indictment, no probable cause to go forward. So what's been the reaction over there in legal circles and federal circles, Justice Department circles, based on what you're hearing, Evan?
Well, Wolf, the issue is, the best chance of any type of case against Officer Wilson really stood with the state. The bar is even higher for the federal government and their civil rights investigation. So one of the things you're seeing happening right now, Wolf, is that the Attorney General and the Justice Department and I think the Obama administration are trying to send the message that, look, if you don't get a case against this officer, if there's no prosecution of this officer, perhaps what the community can take solace in is that there's going to be reform of the police department, perhaps the reform of the Ferguson Police Department, and better policing also from St. Louis County for these communities, which, who really don't feel protected.
Evan, stand by. We're going to come back to you. I know you're working your sources. We'll get more information. We see those National Guard troops, a couple thousand now, ready to be deployed in the coming hours. We're going to see what happens. Let's go in depth right now. Joining us, the president and CEO of the National Urban League, the former New Orleans Mayor, Mark Morial. Mayor, thanks very much for joining us. You're there in Ferguson right now, and you know a lot about what's going on. Do you believe justice was served?
Justice was not served, and the handling of the grand jury, from dumping 50 to 60 witnesses into the grand jury, to the prosecutor not offering a recommendation to the grand jury with respect to an indictment, to the release of the information at 9 p.m. with a 20-minute, if you will, rambling speech, just points to the fact that the process around the state investigation was deeply flawed. So we're disappointed. However, I'm heartened that Attorney General Holder has indicated that his own investigation, that the Justice Department's civil rights investigation, will continue on its own independent track. And I would remind everyone that in cases in the past, whether it's the Danziger case in New Orleans, the Rodney King case, or the Abner Louima case, every one of those cases involved a federal prosecution, which was successful after a failed state investigation. So this is important, as well as the track that the Attorney General outlined with respect to a pattern and practice investigation of the Ferguson Police Department. So this is not over, but it was curious that the grand jury process deviated from what many of us to know is a standard approach to how a prosecutor confronts a grand jury.
Mayor, I want you to stand by. We're only getting started. We have several more questions we want to pose to you. You're there. You met with the family, Michael Brown's family, the attorneys for the family. You were at that news conference. We see the deployment now of a couple thousand National Guard troops. They're getting ready. There you see them right there, batons, shields. They're worried about what's going on. These young men and women, they are about to go onto the streets of Ferguson and in the area to try to prevent the disaster that occurred last night. Much more of the breaking news right after this.